Welcome to Old Stuff Show. In the future, some of my shows will examine a variety of collectibles without any particular theme. So far, I've been focused on somewhat on themes like old photos and old picture frames, postcards, ephemera, and magazines. But I like to do some shows that I've just picked out a few things, nothing in particular as far as a theme, and it's kind of like being at a flea market and making new discoveries. So we'll look at them, we'll give you some information about them, value them where we can. So let's get started today. I mentioned in the past Coca-Cola ads. It seems that everything Coke is collectible these days. One of the more interesting things are wall mounts. Wall mounts are the kinds of things that have Coke advertising on it, and you attach it to the wall, use it as a bottle opener. Actually, they're very hard to find as far as the older ones are concerned. This is another one. It's just a no-name opener that you attach to the wall. But if you find an old Coke wall mount opener, grab it, because like I say, they're very hard to find. I remember years ago the old Coke coolers in the variety stores with the openers on the side, and when I was younger I was collecting a lot of sports stuff, and Coca-Cola had bottle caps with players underneath the caps. So I think there were 80, and they had a round container that you could display them in. So I made a deal with the variety store owner, and I asked him to save me all the caps. So eventually I did get the whole set. But Coke found all kinds of ways to promote their advertising. So like I said, the older the better. Now, speaking of older the better, I have something very unique that I pulled out of my locker, and it's an old Victorian wedding accessory that I think if you looked at it, you wouldn't really know what it is. It comes in this box. It's a tube, a glass tube with lace around it and a ribbon and a wedding book inside. If you're trying to guess what the tube was used for, you might come up blank. But what it was this ribbon, which is inside here, loose, was attached to the tube, put around the bride's wrist. Flour with water inside, a flower was put in it, and she wore it around her wrist on her wedding day going down the aisle. So this is amazing that it still survived. But then again, a lot of wedding things are put away and in a box and kind of forgotten about. This wedding planner book, or wedding book rather, has got all the data that certifies that these two people were married on the 26th day of February 1913. So the box, the tube, and no lid on the box is quite a find if you happen to bump into something like that. But it's a Victorian wedding accessory, and I will put that on eBay. Also, there are old games that I every once in a while bump into. Problem with old games, they're used often and abused somewhat, especially the boxes. But like everything, if you have the box or part of a box, then it makes it a little more valuable. So this particular game here is a game called Tell Me. It's got cards inside, a spinner. The value of this particular item would then be probably the lid for display. Some people like to just have something colorful to display in a rec room or something. So I'll put this on eBay too, but it's as is and not a workable game unless you can fix the spinner, I guess. The other game that I have is it's very old. It's called Touring, and the Touring game is by Parker Brothers. It's a card game. The box is very rough. The sides are basically loose and off on one or two sides. But again, it's an attractive box. It's an old box, and it can be used as display for some room that your games room to make it more interesting to look at. A lot of well-known products in the past had all kinds of little premiums that they put out, and they would sell along with, you know, maybe collecting coupons from having bought some of their products. Mr. Peanut was one. This is a set of Mr. Peanut dishes, big and small, and Mr. Peanut is on the bottom of the dishes. There's 3 of the small ones, one of the big ones, but again, it's old, and it's has some value, not a lot, but again, it's one of the more valuable things with Mr. Peanut would be the original jars with the Mr. Peanut embossed on the side of the jar. That would be pretty good. Also, I pulled out another really sought after collectible, and these are old car brochures. So people just collect them to have them as different examples of car brochures, but then again, some people have the actual car and they want to have some of the original advertising of it. This is a Buick 8, 1932. They're focused on wizard control. It has 9 pages and talks about this amazing car, gives all kinds of diagrams of the parts of the car, and 9 pages of very interesting information. This is in very good condition, and I will have it on eBay. It runs around $10 and up for these old car brochures. There's another one here. It's the Buick 850. Buick 850, 1931. This one has 31 pages, and very thorough. It's in excellent shape, talking about the parts of the car. And so for the car restoration people, this would be invaluable, or for the collector, just another example of an old car brochure. Have the Volkswagen here as well. This is a 1965 brochure. Talks about the model of that year, gives all the information, specifications. Have the Mercedes-Benz brochure as well. I believe this one is 1990, although there's no date on it. But again, it's interesting if you have that particular model of car. The Citroën is another one that this one is in French, but it does talk about the Citroën, and it's 1962 possibly. But again, interesting to look at, and if you speak French, even better. This one is really very old, 1935. This is a car that we don't hear of anymore, the Terraplane. Covers off, but again, the information inside is fantastic, and it gives all the information about the car that came out, called the Terraplane, in 1935. So if you can get like if you're a car restoration person, or you bought an old car, or you remember an older car, people are out there looking for these all the time. So they're quite interesting, for sure. And also owner's manuals. I don't have any here, but owner's manuals of cars for the people who are fixing it up are valuable, and people are looking for it. Anything that's cockshut, here's an owner's manual, the Cockshut 95. I have a couple of envelopes that have been on eBay with the Cockshut advertising, and so it's a farm implement company that's quite collectible. Again, someday I'll do a show on just farm collectibles, and this is part of that type of thing. Steering a little bit away here from paper. Something I remember being around and seeing it on relatives' walls and what have you are these silhouette pictures. I have 2 here, 2 that are framed. They have the curved glass, and they were quite popular in the 1950s. I could put these on eBay. They run around $15 and up. These are a little smaller in size, but there are some that are a little bit bigger than that as well. Talked about in a show about portrait photographs. I have some that are not in the best condition, but it gives an example of the kinds of portrait photos that people are looking for. One sample in particular are photos of children. Just because of the clothing as much as anything is quite fancy, in old Victorian, early 1900s when these photographs would have been taken. Again, another picture. Now that one, this is good. I think you can see the oily surface of it. When I talked about old postcards, the real photo postcards, I talked about an oily finish, and that's what I was talking about right there. So that process was used in the early 1900s. Another category that I've had people ask me for are just simply plain old wedding pictures. And so the wedding picture as a collectible also is quite interesting. If you go really way back, I think this is a copy of the original, but you can really get into the Victorian clothing and background furniture and items like that. So portrait photos are kind of neat, and you can theme them and look for them by what you're particularly interested in. I find these framed photos of, like this one here. This is a photo of the seeding operation out in Saskatchewan. Look at all the horse-drawn equipment that is being used in that photo. That is fantastic. And so it's mentioned here, seeding operations on a Saskatchewan farm. That'd be early 1900s. But the horse-drawn part of it is kind of the interesting part. So I like to look for unusual photographs like that are quite rare. And speaking of rare, again, I'll do a program sometime, but old newspapers. This is just an amazing, particularly old newspaper. It's very rare. It's dated July 11th, 1815. And about 36 years after the American Revolution. It's in great condition. It has 4 pages. There's lots of ads and stories. This is the July, it's talking about the 4th of July, 1776. I think it survived for a couple of reasons. One is the paper in those days was quite a bit thicker, so it seems to be more durable, and it was obviously kept in a room temperature, darkened spot in a box or something, but something like that can be quite interesting to have, and I will put that on eBay. I think that's something for the serious historical collector to have a look at. The panorama photos I talked about, these are the ones that unroll. They look something like this. A lot of times you'll find them framed. And this particular one is of the 11th Canadian Field Ambulance, Canadian Army Overseas, 1941. So for a military collector or a photograph collector, this type of photograph would be quite interesting to have. I mentioned, I think, that I know a person that I sell these to, this kind of thing to, who has a collection of around 100 different kinds of panorama photos. And so the military is one of the subjects that is often found. This one is kind of interesting too, and it's a different one. And this one is the 11th Field Ambulance as well, but in a different setup. So I like to find panorama photos. They're very hard to find, actually. And let me talk about the change in technology. You know, it's happened so fast in our society today, but my generation, we look back and we remember the first TV and what a big event that is, and now, you know, using Facebook and FaceTime and YouTube and everything like that is incredible. But if you follow the development of how music was sold and played, the 8-track stereo tape is really kind of a cool thing to have. You have to have a player, which I do have actually, and something I would never sell because it's kind of neat. But I found these in various places. There's some that Elvis Presley has some music on 8-track tapes as well. And then you get into kind of unusual things. The cigarette generation I talked about so much about on the program of old magazines. So if you had cigarettes, one of the collectibles today, the cigarette collectibles, I talked about the match covers, I talked about the advertising. Ashtrays are actually quite collectible, and ashtray holders, the stands are particularly interesting, the ones that light up. This is just a unique little box that's quite ornate and decorative, and if you pull it forward, then the cigarette comes out and it's stored, and it's just a way to get your cigarettes. So, ingenious little method for the times, and it was set somewhere near an ashtray, and that's where you could store your cigarettes and get them quite quickly. So these are just a few of the things that I pull out every once in a while. I think I'm going to do this flea market show and tell show from time to time because I have so many things, and they're not all themed as a lot of things are, but you'll find that I'll show you some very fascinating stuff. If you have any suggestions and you want to put it on my comment page, that would be great. I can consider them. Also, a reminder to like and subscribe. Show has started. This is around the 7th show that I've been taping, and the show is starting to grow. I really appreciate that support. If you see anything that is not on eBay, my eBay ID, LONREM, LONREM, take a look at that page, and if there's anything that I've talked about on these programs, just put it on the comment page, and I'll put it on eBay for you. Starting to get some improvements together on the show. You'll see some shows, or have seen maybe already, shows that have music and some graphics, and so my editor and friend is doing some work on that. So each Friday I'll add a new show to the collection, Old Stuff Show, and appreciate your support, and we'll say goodbye for today, and happy treasure hunting.